Injured German Shepherd lay on the road with a broken spine. Baby's reaction left everyone in tears. What you're about to listen to will shake you to your core. A simple family drive turned into something that would change lives forever. If you believe in connections that go beyond our understanding, this story might just prove they exist. Like, share, and let us know where you're watching from. Rain slammed against the windshield as lightning split the night sky. The wipers fought a losing battle against the downpour, and Sarah Collins gripped the steering wheel tighter. The backcountry road stretched dark ahead of them, illuminated only by their headlights and occasional flashes of lightning. "Maybe we should have stayed at your parents' place tonight," Sarah said, squinting to see through the curtain of water. Her husband, Jack, sat beside her, checking the weather radar on his phone. "We're almost home," Jack replied, his voice tense but steady. "Just 20 more minutes if this rain doesn't get worse." In the back seat, their 4-year-old daughter Zoe slept peacefully, her small head resting against her car seat, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. The family was returning from Zoe's grandparents' anniversary celebration, a warm evening of cake and stories that had run later than planned. Another flash of lightning illuminated the road ahead, and Sarah slowed as they approached a bend. The tires splashed through a deep puddle, sending water spraying into the night. "Jack, can you check if Zoe's window is fully closed? I don't want her getting wet if this rain keeps up." Jack twisted in his seat to look at their daughter. She's still sound asleep. "Windows—" "Stop!" Zoe's voice cut through the car, so suddenly and sharply that Sarah slammed on the brakes instinctively. The car skidded slightly on the wet road before coming to a halt. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest as she turned to look at her daughter. Zoe was wide awake now, her eyes huge and focused intensely on something ahead of them. "Zoe, what's wrong, sweetie?" Sarah asked, adrenaline coursing through her body. Zoe pressed her small hands against the window, her breath fogging the glass. "There! Stop! He needs help!" She pointed frantically ahead. Jack leaned forward, peering through the rain-lashed windshield. "I don't see anything, Zoe Bear! He's there! He's hurting! Please, Daddy, please!" Tears welled in Zoe's eyes, her voice rising with desperation that seemed impossibly mature for her age. Sarah exchanged a worried glance with Jack. Their daughter had always been sensitive, but this was different. There was an urgency in her voice they'd never heard before. "Let me pull over safely," Sarah said, easing the car to the shoulder of the road. Jack reached for the flashlight they kept in the glove compartment. "Stay in the car with Mommy, okay? I'll take a quick look," Jack said, unclicking his seatbelt. "No!" Zoe was already struggling with her car seat straps. "He needs me! He's calling me!" Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain. "Zoe, what are you talking about? Who's calling you?" "Max! His name is Max. He's so scared, Mommy." Before either parent could respond, Jack opened his door, and the sound of the storm rushed in. The beam of his flashlight cut through the darkness, sweeping across the road. For a moment, there was nothing but rain and wet asphalt. Then the light caught something at the edge of the road, something large and dark. "Sarah," Jack called, his voice tight. "There's a dog out here." Sarah's mouth fell open. How had Zoe known? Their daughter had been asleep just moments ago. Jack moved the flashlight beam, illuminating the form more clearly. A large German Shepherd lay on his side at the edge of the road, his dark fur matted with rain, and something else that looked horribly like blood. The dog's chest rose and fell in shallow, labored breaths. "He's alive!" Jack called back. "Looks like he was hit by a car. It's bad, Sarah." In the back seat, Zoe was crying now, fighting against her car seat straps with growing desperation. "Let me out! Max needs me. He's so scared." Sarah's mind raced. How could her daughter know the dog was there? How could she possibly know its name? Had she glimpsed it through the rain somehow? No, she'd been asleep. And even if she'd woken up, she couldn't have seen the animal from her position in the back seat. "Zoe, honey, calm down," Sarah said, reaching back to touch her daughter's knee. "Daddy's checking on the dog." "His name is Max," Zoe insisted, her voice rising. "He's a police dog. Someone hurt him and left him there. He needs us right now." Sarah felt the hairs rise on the back of her neck. A police dog? This was getting too strange. Outside, Jack was kneeling beside the German Shepherd, shielding it from the rain with his jacket. The dog's eyes were open, dark, and filled with pain, but he wasn't growling or showing signs of aggression despite his injuries. Jack gently ran his hand over the dog's side, wincing at what he felt. "Sarah," he called, "I think his back is broken. We need to call someone." Sarah fumbled for her phone, but Zoe's wailing grew louder. "No, no animal control. They'll put him to sleep. Max says he wants to live. He has something important to do." "Zoe!" Sarah turned fully in her seat now, startled by her daughter's words. "Honey, how do you know these things? You need to calm down and tell me." Zoe's face was streaked with tears, her eyes wide and desperate. "I just know, Mommy. Max is talking to me in my head. He's scared and hurting, but he doesn't want to die. Please help him." Sarah's hand trembled as she looked from her daughter to her husband kneeling in the rain. Was this just a child's imagination going wild, or something else? Either way, the dog was real and suffering. "Jack," she called, making a decision. "Let's get him in the car. There's an emergency vet clinic in Chester, about 15 minutes from here." Jack looked up, rain streaming down his face. "Sarah, are you sure? He's badly injured, and we don't know if he's someone's pet or—" "He's a police dog," Zoe shouted again. "Officer Bryan was his handler. The bad man hurt Officer Bryan and tried to hurt Max too. Please, Daddy, please." Jack's eyes widened at the specific details pouring from his daughter's mouth. He looked down at the injured German shepherd, noticing for the first time a torn piece of what could be a uniform caught in the dog's collar. "Sarah," he said slowly, "I think she might be right. This could be a K9 unit dog." The rain seemed to pound harder as they faced their decision. Jack carefully removed his jacket and laid it on the ground next to the dog. "If we're going to move him, we need to be extremely careful. His spine might be damaged. We need something flat to transport him." Sarah was already opening the trunk. "We have that old boogie board from last summer. Will that work?" Jack nodded, and Sarah retrieved the flat plastic board. Together they worked to gently slide it under the injured German shepherd. The dog whimpered but didn't struggle as they moved him, his eyes seeming to watch them with an intelligence that sent another chill through Sarah. "Easy, boy," Jack murmured. "We're trying to help you." "His name is Max," Zoe called from the car, her face pressed against the window. "He understands you." As if in response, the dog's tail twitched slightly, and his eyes remained fixed on Zoe through the car window. With painstaking care, Jack and Sarah lifted the makeshift stretcher and carried the heavy dog to their SUV. They folded down the seats in the back to make a flat space, creating a barrier with blankets from the emergency kit to separate Zoe from the injured animal. "Honey, you need to stay in your car seat," Sarah told her daughter firmly. "The dog, Max, is hurt and might be scared. We don't want him to accidentally hurt you." "He won't hurt me," Zoe said with absolute certainty. But she remained in her seat as her parents carefully loaded the German shepherd into the back of the vehicle. Once the dog was secured as best they could manage, Jack climbed back into the passenger seat, soaked to the skin and shivering. Sarah turned the heat up and pulled carefully back onto the road. "Chester Emergency Animal Hospital," she said, entering it into the GPS. 15 minutes. "He says thank you," Zoe whispered from the back seat, her small hand stretched toward the barrier of blankets, not quite touching the injured dog. "He's very brave, but he's hurting so much." Jack and Sarah exchanged another look, a silent communication between parents who had no explanation for what was happening, but knew they couldn't ignore it. "Zoe," Jack said carefully, "how do you know his name is Max, and about him being a police dog?" Zoe didn't take her eyes off the wounded animal. "He told me, in my head. Not with words exactly. I just know. Like how I know when you're sad, even when you're smiling." Sarah gripped the steering wheel tighter. Their daughter had always been perceptive, noticing things most children missed. But this was different. This was impossible. From the back of the SUV came a soft whine, and Zoe immediately responded. "It's okay, Max. We're getting you help. The doctor will make the pain stop." The dog's breathing seemed to ease slightly at the sound of her voice, though his condition was clearly critical. Sarah pressed harder on the accelerator, pushing through the storm toward the animal hospital. "Jack," she whispered, "what is happening here?" Jack shook his head, water still dripping from his hair. "I don't know, but that dog recognized the name Max when Zoe said it. I saw his ears move." The next 12 minutes passed in tense silence, broken only by Zoe's soft murmurs to the injured German shepherd and the dog's occasional whimpers. When they finally pulled into the parking lot of Chester Emergency Animal Hospital, the storm had eased to a steady rainfall. "I'll run in and get help," Jack said, jumping out of the car before Sarah had fully stopped. Through the windshield, Sarah watched her husband burst through the clinic doors. Moments later, he emerged with two veterinary technicians pushing a gurney. One carried a neck brace designed for animals. Sarah turned to look at Zoe. "Honey, the doctors are coming to help Max now. They're going to take him inside where they can give him medicine for the pain." Zoe nodded solemnly. "He understands. He's trying to be brave." The back of the SUV opened and the veterinary technicians assessed the situation quickly. "Multiple trauma, suspected spinal injury," one said professionally. "Large male German Shepherd, appears to be in his prime. No visible identification except the collar." They worked with practiced efficiency to secure the dog's neck before transferring him to their gurney. As they lifted him, the German Shepherd let out a heart-wrenching yelp that made everyone flinch. "Max!" Zoe cried out, tears streaming down her face again. "It's okay. They're helping you." The dog's eyes found her, and remarkably, he seemed to calm slightly at the sound of her voice. "Is this your family's dog?" one of the technicians asked Sarah. "No, we found him on the side of the road," Sarah explained. "My daughter thinks he might be a police K9. The technician nodded, examining the collar more closely. "There's something caught here that could be from a uniform. We'll check for a microchip once we get him inside." They wheeled the gurney toward the clinic doors, and Sarah helped Zoe out of her car seat. The little girl immediately tried to follow the dog. "Ma'am," the remaining technician said, "I need to ask you to fill out some paperwork while the doctor examines the dog. Since you're not the owners, we'll need to document how you found him." "Of course," Sarah replied, taking Zoe's hand firmly. "Come on, sweetie. We need to let the doctors work." "But Max needs me," Zoe protested, pulling against her mother's grip. "Zoe," Jack said, kneeling to her level, "Max needs the doctors right now. They have medicine and special tools to help him. We'll be right in the waiting room." Reluctantly, Zoe allowed herself to be led into the clinic. The waiting area was brightly lit and nearly empty at this late hour, with just one other family sitting with a cat carrier. Jack went to the front desk to handle the paperwork, while Sarah sat with Zoe, who couldn't keep still. The little girl paced the small waiting area, her eyes constantly darting to the doors that led to the treatment rooms. "He's scared without me," she whispered. "He doesn't understand why they're touching his back. It hurts so much." Sarah pulled her daughter into a hug. "How do you know that, Zoe? Please help Mommy understand." Zoe looked up at her mother with eyes that seemed older than her years. "I just know, Mommy. Like I know when Grandma is about to call before the phone rings. Like I knew when Sparky from my class was going to die before Miss Williams told us. I just know things sometimes." Sarah felt a shiver run through her. There had been incidents before, moments when Zoe had shown an uncanny awareness, but they had dismissed them as coincidences or an act of imagination. Now, faced with this situation, Sarah wondered if they had been wrong to ignore the signs. Jack returned from the front desk and sat heavily beside them. "They're examining him now. The receptionist called Animal Control to see if any police departments have reported a missing K9 officer." "Did you tell them his name is Max?" Zoe asked urgently. "I did, sweetheart," Jack assured her. "They're going to check everything." "What happens if he doesn't belong to the police?" Sarah asked quietly. Jack sighed, running a hand through his damp hair. "If no one claims him and his injuries are as severe as they look, they'll probably recommend—" "No," Zoe jumped up, her small face fierce. "They can't put him to sleep. Max wants to live. He has something important to do." The other family in the waiting room looked over at them, startled by Zoe's outburst. "Zoe, please lower your voice," Sarah said, gently pulling her daughter back into her seat. "No one's going to do anything yet. The doctors are helping him right now." Zoe's bottom lip trembled, but she nodded. "He's in so much pain, Mommy, but he's fighting. He doesn't want to go to sleep forever." The doors to the treatment area swung open, and a woman in a white coat emerged. Her name tag read, Dr. Rachel Chen. She scanned the waiting room and approached them. "Are you the family who brought in the German Shepherd?" she asked. Jack and Sarah both stood. Zoe pressed between them. "Yes, we found him on the side of the road," Jack explained. "Has he been microchipped? Do you know who he belongs to?" Dr. Chen gestured for them to follow her to a quieter corner of the waiting room, Her expression was grave. "He does have a microchip. We're waiting for the database to give us the owner information. In the meantime, I wanted to discuss his condition with you." Zoe clutched her mother's hand tightly, her eyes never leaving the veterinarian's face. "The dog has suffered extensive trauma," Dr. Chen explained gently. "X-rays show fractures to his spine, several broken ribs, and internal bleeding. He's also showing signs of blunt force trauma to his head." "Will he live?" Jack asked, feeling Zoe's grip tighten on his other hand. Dr. Chen's expression softened as she glanced at Zoe. "His injuries are very severe. We've stabilized him for now and given him pain medication, but he'll need extensive surgery, and even then, there's a high probability he may never walk again. The cost of treatment would be substantial, and without an owner to authorize—" "His name is Max," Zoe interrupted, her voice quavering but determined. "He's a police dog, and he doesn't want to die. The bad man hurt his handler and tried to hurt Max too, but Max ran away to find help." Dr. Chen blinked in surprise, looking from Zoe to her parents. "Has she met this dog before tonight?" "No," Sarah said, placing a protective hand on Zoe's shoulder. "We've never seen him before, but ever since we found him, Zoe has been saying these things. She knew his name, that he was a police dog. And she was asleep when we first drove past him," Jack added. "She woke up suddenly and demanded we stop, saying someone needed help." Dr. Chen's professional demeanor faltered slightly. "That's unusual. Children can sometimes have strong intuitive connections with animals, but this is quite specific." The clinic doors opened and a uniformed police officer walked in. Shaking rain from his coat, the receptionist pointed in their direction and the officer approached. "Evening, folks. I'm Officer Taylor from Chester PD. I understand you found a German Shepherd that might be a missing police K9. "Yes," Jack confirmed. "We found him on Route 27, about 15 miles east of here." Officer Taylor nodded, his expression somber. "We've been looking for him. His name is Max, and he belongs to the K9 unit in Lakeside County. His handler, Officer Brian Sullivan, was found deceased 2 days ago. The dog went missing from the scene." Sarah gasped, putting her hand over her mouth. Jack's face paled. Zoe stood very still, looking up at the police officer with eyes that held no surprise at all. "The bad man hurt Officer Brian," she said quietly. "Max tried to protect him, but the bad man hurt Max too. Max ran away to find help, but he was too hurt and had to stop on the road." Officer Taylor stared at the little girl, clearly taken aback. "How do you know that, young lady?" Jack quickly explained Zoe's strange connection with the dog, how she had known details none of them could have known. As he spoke, the officer's expression shifted from skepticism to unease. "We're investigating Officer Sullivan's death as a homicide," he said finally. "The details of the case aren't public yet, but what your daughter just described, it's consistent with what we believe happened." The weight of his words settled over them. The German Shepherd wasn't just an injured animal. He was potentially a witness to a murder. "What happens to Max now?" Sarah asked, breaking the tense silence. Officer Taylor turned to Dr. Chen. "What's his prognosis, doctor?" Dr. Chen straightened, her professional demeanor returning. "Critical but stable. He'll need surgery for his spinal injuries and intensive rehabilitation. The department would need to authorize the expenses, and even then, it's unlikely he could return to service." The officer nodded thoughtfully. "I'll need to contact my superiors and the Lakeside Department. Officer Sullivan had no family. Max was everything to him. The department will want to know about this." "Can I see him?" Zoe asked suddenly. "Max is scared with all the strange people. He wants someone he knows." The adults exchanged uncertain glances. Dr. Chen hesitated. "He's heavily sedated right now, and we normally don't allow visitors in the treatment area, especially children." "Please," Zoe begged. "I promise I'll be quiet. He needs to know we didn't leave him." Dr. Chen looked at the parents questioningly. Sarah nodded slowly. "If it's possible, just for a minute. She's been so worried about him." After a moment's consideration, Dr. Chen agreed. "Very briefly, he's sedated and on IVs, so it may be a bit scary to see. Are you sure you want to, sweetie?" Zoe nodded solemnly. "I'm not scared. Max needs me." Dr. Chen led them through the double doors into the treatment area. The clinical smell of antiseptic filled the air as they walked past examination rooms to an intensive care unit at the back. Through a glass window, they could see the German Shepherd lying on a padded table, an IV in his leg, monitoring equipment attached to his body. His powerful frame looked vulnerable under the bright medical lights. Dr. Chen stopped them at the door. "I can only allow one person in, and just for a moment. He's not conscious, but sometimes animals can sense presence even under sedation." Before anyone could decide, Zoe slipped from her mother's grasp and through the door that Dr. Chen had begun to open. Sarah moved to follow, but Jack gently held her back. "Let's see," he whispered. Inside the room, Zoe approached the table where Max lay. The German Shepherd's chest rose and fell in shallow, regular breaths, his eyes closed. Machines beeped softly, tracking his vital signs. Zoe stood on her tiptoes to reach the edge of the table. With incredible gentleness, she placed her small hand on the dog's head, careful to avoid the areas where his fur was shaved for medical equipment. "It's okay, Max," she whispered. "I'm here. You're safe now. The doctors are going to help you, and then you can tell everyone what the bad man did. You just have to be brave a little longer." Through the glass, the adults watched in astonishment as the sedated dog's tail moved, just a slight twitch, but unmistakable. One of his ears flicked forward, as if catching the sound of Zoe's voice despite the heavy sedation. "That's unusual," Dr. Chen murmured. "He shouldn't be responsive at his current sedation level." Officer Taylor watched with growing wonder. "I have worked with K9 units for 12 years, and I've never seen anything like this." Inside the room, Zoe continued to stroke the dog's head gently. "You'll come home with us when you're better," she promised. "I'll help you get strong again, and then we'll find the bad man together." The monitors tracking Max's heart rate showed a subtle but definite change. His heartbeat strengthened and stabilized as Zoe spoke. Dr. Chen shook her head in amazement. "That's remarkable. His vitals are actually improving." Sarah felt tears well in her eyes as she watched her daughter with the injured German Shepherd. Whatever was happening between them defied explanation, but she couldn't deny the evidence before her eyes. After a few minutes, Dr. Chen gently opened the door. "We need to let him rest now, sweetie." Zoe nodded, giving Max one final gentle pat. "I'll come back tomorrow," she promised. "You just focus on getting better." As she rejoined her parents, Officer Taylor knelt to her level. "Young lady, you've done a very brave thing tonight, helping Max. I'm going to make sure he gets the best care possible." Zoe looked at him with those unnervingly mature eyes. "The bad man is still out there. Max knows who he is. That's why Max needs to get better, so he can tell everyone." Officer Taylor's expression grew serious. "Did Max tell you who the bad man is?" Zoe shook her head. "Not yet. He's too hurt right now, and it makes him scared to remember. But when he's better, he'll show me, and then I can show you." The officer stood slowly, exchanging a significant look with Jack and Sarah. "We should talk more about this," he said quietly to them. "If your daughter somehow has information about Officer Sullivan's murder." "We'll help however we can," Jack assured him, placing a protective arm around Zoe's shoulders. "But it's been a long night, and Zoe needs rest." "Of course," Officer Taylor agreed. "Here's my card. I'll be in touch tomorrow about Max's treatment options and the other matter." As they prepared to leave, Dr. Chen pulled Sarah aside. "Mrs. Collins, what your daughter did in there was remarkable. Max's vitals improved dramatically just from her presence. I can't explain it medically, but I've been a veterinarian for 15 years, and sometimes there are connections between humans and animals that science can't fully account for." Sarah nodded, watching Zoe, who was still gazing through the glass at the sedated German Shepherd. "What happens to him now?" "I'll be speaking with the police department about treatment authorization," Dr. Chen replied. "Given the circumstances, I believe they'll approve the surgery. Whether he can ever return to service is another question, but at least he'll have a chance." "Thank you, Doctor," Sarah said sincerely. As they walked back to their car, the rain had finally stopped, leaving the world washed clean and quiet. Zoe climbed into her car seat without protest, exhaustion finally catching up with her now that she knew Max was being cared for. "Daddy," she murmured as Jack buckled her in, "Max says we need to find Officer Bryan's notebook. The bad man couldn't find it, but Max knows where it is." Jack paused, his hands still on the buckle. "What notebook, Zoe Bear?" "The one with the bad man's name in it," Zoe said, her eyelids growing heavy. It's hidden under the loose board in Officer Bryan's kitchen, where he used to hide Max's special treats. Jack and Sarah exchanged another look over their daughter's head. Equal parts concern, confusion, and growing belief that something truly extraordinary was happening. As Sarah started the car, Zoe was already drifting off to sleep, her small body finally surrendering to exhaustion. Jack reached across to squeeze his wife's hand. "What do we do now?" Sarah whispered. Jack looked back at their sleeping daughter, then out at the night. "I don't know, but I think we just became part of something much bigger than finding an injured dog in the rain." Sarah nodded, pulling out of the animal hospital parking lot. The road ahead was dark, but the storm had passed. Whatever waited for them in the coming days, they would face it together. Their family and a wounded German shepherd named Max, connected by something that defied explanation but couldn't be denied. The next morning arrived with gentle sunlight streaming through the windows of the Collins' modest two-story home. Sarah hadn't slept well, her mind replaying the events of the previous night, like a movie she couldn't pause. She found Jack already in the kitchen, coffee in hand, staring at Officer Taylor's business card on the table. "I called the animal hospital," he said as Sarah entered. "Max made it through the night. They're prepping him for surgery later today." Sarah poured herself a cup of coffee, relief washing over her. "Did they say anything about the police department? Whether they'll cover his treatment?" "The Lakeside K-9 unit supervisor approved everything," Jack confirmed. "Apparently this case is high priority. Officer Taylor also called while you were in the shower. He wants to talk to Zoe again when she's up." As if summoned by her name, their daughter appeared in the kitchen doorway, still in her pajamas, her stuffed rabbit clutched tightly to her chest. "Is Max okay?" she asked immediately, her eyes wide with concern. Sarah knelt down to Zoe's level. "Yes, sweetie. The doctors are taking good care of him. He's going to have surgery today to help fix his back." Zoe nodded solemnly. "He's still scared, but he's trying to be brave. Can we go see him?" Jack and Sarah exchanged glances. "Not right away, Zoe Bear," Jack explained gently. "He'll be in surgery, and then he needs to rest. But Officer Taylor wants to talk to you today. Do you remember him from last night?" Zoe climbed onto a kitchen chair. "The police officer with the kind eyes but sad mouth. He misses his dog that went to heaven last year." Sarah nearly dropped her coffee mug. "Zoe, how do you know about his dog?" The little girl shrugged, reaching for the box of cereal on the table. "I just know, like I know about Max." Jack cleared his throat, clearly unsettled. "Well, he's coming over in about an hour. He wants to ask you some questions about what Max told you." "About the bad man," Zoe said matter-of-factly, pouring cereal into her bowl, "and Officer Bryan's notebook." The doorbell rang precisely an hour later. Officer Taylor stood on their porch, accompanied by a woman in plain clothes who introduced herself as Detective Laura Mercer from Lakeside County. "Thank you for agreeing to speak with us," Detective Mercer said as they settled in the living room. Her eyes immediately went to Zoe, who was coloring quietly on the floor. "And this must be Zoe." Zoe looked up from her drawing and studied the detective with unusual intensity. "You don't believe I can talk to Max," she said simply. "That's okay. I didn't know I could either until yesterday." Detective Mercer blinked, clearly taken aback by the child's directness. "Well, Zoe, I'm keeping an open mind. Officer Taylor told me you knew some things about Max and Officer Sullivan that were surprising." Jack sat next to Zoe protectively. "Before we start, I want to be clear that if this becomes too much for our daughter, we're stopping immediately." "Of course," Detective Mercer agreed. "We just want to ask a few questions." Officer Taylor, who seemed more receptive to Zoe's unusual abilities, took the lead. "Zoe, you mentioned last night that Max knew where Officer Sullivan's notebook was hidden. Can you tell us more about that?" Zoe put down her crayon and picked up a fresh piece of paper. With remarkable precision for a 4-year-old, she began to draw. "Max showed me Officer Bryan's house," she explained as she sketched. "It's blue with white shutters and has a big tree in the front yard with a bird feeder hanging from it." Detective Mercer leaned forward, interest overtaking skepticism. Officer Sullivan's address hadn't been released to the public. "The kitchen has yellow walls," Zoe continued, switching to a yellow crayon, "and a picture of Max on the refrigerator from when he was a puppy. The loose board is under the table, right where Max would sit while Officer Bryan cooked dinner." She finished her drawing, a surprisingly detailed layout of what appeared to be a kitchen, and handed it to Officer Taylor. The officer's face paled as he studied it. "This is accurate," he said, showing the drawing to Detective Mercer. "I've been to Sullivan's house. The layout matches, right down to the position of the refrigerator." Detective Mercer's professional composure wavered. "What's in this notebook, Zoe?" "Names," Zoe replied. "Names of bad police officers who were friends with the man who hurt Officer Bryan. Max says Officer Bryan found out they were helping drug people hide their money and drugs." The two officers exchanged shocked glances. The details of Sullivan's investigation hadn't been shared with anyone outside the immediate investigative team. "How does Max know all this?" Detective Mercer asked, unable to mask her disbelief. "He was there when Officer Bryan wrote in his notebook," Zoe explained patiently, as if stating the obvious. "Max always sat with him in the evenings, and he was there when the bad man came to the house." Can you describe the bad man?" Officer Taylor asked carefully. Zoe closed her eyes, her small face scrunching in concentration. "He's tall with angry eyes. He has a scar on his hand that looks like a lightning bolt. He smelled like the candy Officer Bryan kept in his desk at work." Sarah gasped softly. The specificity of her daughter's description was chilling. "Peppermints," Officer Taylor whispered to Detective Mercer. "Sullivan always had peppermints in his desk." Detective Mercer stood abruptly. "I need to make a call, and I think we need to check that loose floorboard immediately." While the detective stepped outside with her phone, Officer Taylor remained with the family. "I know this must be overwhelming," he said to Jack and Sarah, "but your daughter's information could be crucial to solving Officer Sullivan's murder." "What happens now?" Sarah asked, her arm around Zoe's shoulders. "If we find that notebook?" Officer Taylor trailed off, then steadied himself. "There are rumors of corruption in our department. Sullivan was investigating something internally before he was killed. If your daughter's information leads us to evidence, it could break open the entire case." Detective Mercer returned, her face set in determined lines. "We've got a warrant to search Sullivan's house again. I'd like to bring Zoe with us." "Absolutely not," Jack said firmly. "She's 4 years old. She's not going to a murder victim's house." "Dad," Zoe said, tugging at his sleeve, "Max needs me to help. The notebook is important." "There has to be another way," Sarah insisted. "Can't you just check under the floorboard based on her drawing?" Detective Mercer considered this. "We could, but if there's nothing there, we'd be back to square one. Zoe seems to have a connection to this case that defies explanation." "What if we compromise?" Officer Taylor suggested. "We could video call from Sullivan's house, show Zoe the kitchen. If the loose board isn't obvious, she might be able to direct us." After much discussion, Jack and Sarah reluctantly agreed to this plan. They couldn't deny that their daughter possessed information that might help solve a murder and bring justice for Max's handler. "We'll keep you updated," Detective Mercer promised, as she and Officer Taylor prepared to leave. "And the animal hospital called while I was outside. Max came through the preliminary procedures well. They're proceeding with the spinal surgery this afternoon." Zoe brightened at this news. "Can we visit him tomorrow? He needs to see a friendly face when he wakes up." "Let's see what the doctors say after his surgery," Sarah said, smoothing her daughter's hair. As the officers left, Zoe returned to her coloring, seemingly unburdened by the weight of what had just transpired. Jack and Sarah retreated to the kitchen, both in need of a moment to process. "Do you believe her?" Sarah whispered, though Zoe was out of earshot. "About talking to Max in her head?" Jack ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know how else to explain it. The details she knows, the way the dog responded to her at the animal hospital, it's not normal, Sarah." "She's always been sensitive," Sarah said thoughtfully. "Remember when she knew Grandpa Joe was in the hospital before we got the call? Or how she always knows when one of us is upset, even when we're trying to hide it?" Jack nodded. "But this is different. This is specific information about a murder case, about places she's never been, people she's never met." "What if it's real?" Sarah asked, voicing the question they'd both been avoiding. "What if she really can communicate with Max somehow?" Before Jack could respond, his phone rang. It was Officer Taylor, his voice tense with excitement. "We found it," he said without preamble. "The notebook was exactly where Zoe said it would be, under a loose floorboard in the kitchen, and it contains names. Names of officers suspected of working with a drug trafficking ring. This is huge." Jack gripped the phone tighter. "So you believe her now, about her connection with Max?" There was a pause on the line. "I don't know how to explain it, but the evidence is right in front of me. Sullivan was building a case against corrupt officers in our own department, including—" He stopped abruptly. "I shouldn't say more over the phone, but please thank Zoe for us. This could break the whole case open." After hanging up, Jack relayed the conversation to Sarah, whose face reflected his own mix of pride and unease. "Our daughter is helping solve a murder," she said, the reality of it still sinking in, "through a telepathic connection with a dog." "When you say it like that," Jack let out a strained laugh. "What do we do now?" Their question was answered 3 hours later when Detective Mercer called again. The notebook had led to the identification of several corrupt officers, including one, Detective James Wilson, who had a distinctive scar on his hand matching Zoe's description. Wilson had also been Sullivan's partner and had unrestricted access to his house. "We're bringing Wilson in for questioning," Detective Mercer explained, "but his lawyers will tear apart our case if all we have is a notebook and a 4-year-old who claims to communicate with a dog." "So what do you need from us?" Sarah asked, already guessing the answer. "We need more. We need Max to recover so we can see if there's any physical evidence linking Wilson to the scene. And we need to keep Zoe's involvement quiet for now. If word gets out about what she knows—" "You think she could be in danger?" Jack finished, his chest tightening at the thought. "I think we need to be cautious," Detective Mercer replied carefully. "Wilson has friends in the department. Until we know who to trust, it's best if Zoe's abilities remain between us." After the call ended, Jack and Sarah sat in stunned silence until Zoe wandered into the kitchen. "Max is out of surgery," she announced. "He's very sleepy and everything feels floaty, but the doctor with the kind voice says his back is fixed now." Sarah pulled her daughter onto her lap. "Did Max tell you that just now?" Zoe nodded. "He's trying to remember more about the bad man for the police, but it makes his head hurt. He'll show me when he feels better." Jack exchanged a look with Sarah. Their ordinary life had transformed overnight into something that defied rational explanation, and at the center of it all was their extraordinarily gifted daughter. "Zoe, honey," Sarah said carefully, "the police found Officer Bryan's notebook right where you said it would be. It's going to help them catch the person who hurt him and Max." Zoe didn't seem surprised. "That's good. Max will be happy. He loved Officer Bryan very much. The police think it might be better if we don't tell other people about how you can talk to Max," Jack added, "just for a little while until they catch the bad man." Zoe considered this. "Like a secret mission?" Jack smiled despite his worry. "Something like that. Can you keep it a secret for now?" She nodded solemnly. "I promise. But can we still visit Max tomorrow? He needs to see us." "We'll call the animal hospital in the morning," Sarah promised. "If the doctors say it's okay, we'll go." The next morning brought mixed news. Max had survived the complex spinal surgery, but Dr. Chen remained cautious about his prognosis. "The damage was extensive," she explained when they arrived at the animal hospital. "We've repaired what we could, but it's too soon to know if he'll regain full mobility. He's heavily sedated right now for pain management." "Can we see him?" Zoe asked, bouncing anxiously on her toes. Dr. Chen hesitated, then nodded. "Briefly. And I must warn you, he looks different today. There are more machines, and his back is shaved and bandaged." She led them to the ICU, where Max lay on a padded bed, surrounded by monitoring equipment. His powerful body seemed diminished somehow, with a large surgical site on his back covered by bandages. IVs delivered fluids and medication, and a monitoring device beeped steadily, tracking his vital signs. Despite Dr. Chen's warnings, Zoe showed no fear. She approached the bed confidently, standing on her tiptoes to see Max better. "Hi, Max," she said softly. "We came back like I promised. The doctors fixed your back, and now you just have to rest and get strong again." As if he heard her through the heavy sedation, the German Shepherd's tail moved slightly against the bedding. One ear twitched forward toward the sound of her voice. Dr. Chen watched in amazement. "That's remarkable. He shouldn't be responsive at this level of sedation." "He knows it's Zoe," Sarah explained simply. Zoe placed her small hand gently on Max's head, careful to avoid the areas with medical equipment. "The police found Officer Bryan's notebook," she whispered to him. "They know about the bad man now. You did a good job protecting it." Max's vital signs on the monitor changed subtly. His heart rate strengthened and steadied. His blood pressure normalized. Dr. Chen shook her head in disbelief. "I've never seen anything like this. His readings improve when she talks to him. Doctor, Jack asked, what happens to Max now, after he recovers from surgery? Dr. Chen's expression grew serious. That's complicated. The police department technically owns him, but a K-9 officer with his injuries would normally be retired from service. Finding a home for a retired police dog with special medical needs isn't easy. He's coming home with us, Zoe stated with absolute certainty. He already told me. Jack and Sarah exchanged looks. They hadn't discussed this possibility, though perhaps they should have seen it coming. That's not entirely up to us, Zoe, Sarah explained gently. Max belongs to the police department. Actually, Dr. Chen interjected, Officer Taylor mentioned something about that this morning. Given the circumstances and Max's unusual bond with your daughter, the department is considering allowing you to foster him during his recovery, with the possibility of adoption if he's officially retired from service. Hope flared in Zoe's eyes. See? Max knew. Their visit was cut short when Max needed his next round of medication, but Dr. Chen promised they could return the following day. As they left the hospital, Officer Taylor was waiting in the parking lot. I was hoping to catch you, he said, looking more haggard than the day before. We've hit a complication with the case. He explained that Detective Wilson had a solid alibi for the time of Sullivan's murder. He'd been at a department function with 20 witnesses. The evidence in the notebook implicated him in corruption, but not necessarily in his partner's death. We still think he's involved somehow, Officer Taylor concluded, but we need more. That's why Max's testimony, or whatever information he can provide through Zoe, has become even more critical. Zoe, who had been listening quietly, spoke up. Max says the bad man didn't do it alone. He had a friend with him, a man with a voice like thunder. Officer Taylor crouched to her level. Do you mean a loud voice, Zoe? She shook her head. No, it was deep and rumbly, like when thunder is far away, but you can still feel it in your chest. And he smelled different from the first bad man, like the stuff Mommy puts in our car to make it smell nice. Air freshener? Sarah suggested. Wilson has a brother-in-law who works as a mechanic, Officer Taylor said thoughtfully. Big guy, deep voice. I'll need to check his whereabouts that night. As Officer Taylor left to pursue this new lead, the Collins family headed home, each lost in their own thoughts about the extraordinary situation they found themselves in. For Zoe, it all seemed perfectly natural. Of course she could hear Max's thoughts. For her parents, the reality of their daughter's gift was still sinking in, along with the potential dangers it brought. That evening, as Sarah tucked Zoe into bed, her daughter spoke drowsily. Max showed me something new today, Mommy. A shiny thing the bad man dropped in Officer Bryan's yard when he was running away. Sarah's hand stilled on the blanket. What kind of shiny thing, sweetie? A bracelet with his name on it. It fell under the big bushes by the fence. Max saw it happen but couldn't tell anyone until now. Sarah kissed her daughter's forehead. We'll tell Officer Taylor tomorrow. Now get some sleep. As Zoe drifted off, Sarah stood in the doorway watching her, a mixture of wonder and fear swirling in her heart. Their ordinary life had vanished the moment they stopped for an injured dog on a rainy night, replaced by something both miraculous and frightening. How many more secrets did Max hold in his wounded body? And what dangers might come to their door because of what their daughter could reveal? Have you ever witnessed a connection between a child and animal that seemed almost supernatural? Share your story below. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of hospital visits, police interviews, and sleepless nights. Max underwent 2 additional surgeries to stabilize his spine, each one leaving the Collins family on edge, until Dr. Chen emerged with cautious good news. His recovery is remarkable, she told them after the final procedure. I have never seen an animal heal at this rate, especially from such severe trauma. It's almost as if he has an extraordinary will to live. Zoe, who had insisted on coming to the hospital every day despite her parents' concerns about the emotional toll, nodded knowingly. He wants to get better so he can protect us, and so he can tell everything he knows about the bad men. Sarah stroked her daughter's hair, still adjusting to Zoe's matter-of-fact statements about her connection with Max. In the past 2 weeks, they had witnessed too many instances of Zoe knowing things she couldn't possibly know to doubt her anymore. When can he come home with us? Zoe asked, looking up at Dr. Chen with pleading eyes. The veterinarian glanced at Jack and Sarah. Actually, that's what I wanted to discuss with your parents. Max has reached a point where he no longer needs around-the-clock medical supervision. His physical therapy could be managed on an outpatient basis. Jack cleared his throat. So, you're saying... I'm saying he could be discharged as early as tomorrow, provided he has a suitable home environment for his continued recovery, Dr. Chen explained. The police department has authorized his release to your family as temporary guardians, given the unusual circumstances. Sarah felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. They had discussed this possibility, even started preparing their home, but the reality of caring for an injured police dog with special needs, not to mention one who was key to a murder investigation, was daunting. What would we need to do for him? She asked. Dr. Chen outlined Max's needs: a quiet space to rest, assistance with mobility as he regains strength in his hind legs, regular medication, and weekly physical therapy sessions at the hospital. He still can't walk unassisted, she cautioned, and there's no guarantee he ever will, though I'm more optimistic than I was initially. You'd need to help him move using a special harness. We can do it, Jack said with determination. We've already set up a space for him in the living room where he won't have to navigate stairs. Zoe beamed, bouncing on her toes. I told Max he's coming home with us tomorrow. He's happy but nervous too. He's never lived in a house with a little girl before. Dr. Chen smiled, no longer surprised by Zoe's insights. Well, I think you two will figure it out just fine. Let's go over the medication schedule and care instructions so you'll be ready for tomorrow. That evening, the Collins family worked together to prepare for Max's arrival. Jack assembled the large orthopedic dog bed they had purchased, positioning it in the corner of the living room, where Max could see both the front door and the hallway leading to the bedrooms. Sarah organized the medications and supplies in a designated cabinet, while Zoe carefully selected which of her stuffed animals Max would want to have near his bed. Not the rabbit, she decided, setting aside her own favorite. Max says police dogs don't play with rabbits, but he likes this bear because it reminds him of the one Officer Brian gave him for Christmas. Sarah paused in her organizing, still finding these moments jarring. Moments when her 4-year-old casually revealed intimate details about the life of a dog she'd only known for 2 weeks. Zoe, honey, she said, sitting down beside her daughter, how clear are the things Max tells you? Does he use actual words? Zoe considered this seriously. Not words like we use, more like pictures and feelings. Sometimes I just know things when I'm near him, like how his back is feeling or what he's worried about. It's like when you know I'm sad even when I'm trying to smile, but stronger. Sarah nodded, remembering how she had tried to explain maternal intuition to others and always failed. And these pictures he shows you about Officer Brian and the bad men, they're clear enough to understand? Sometimes they are blurry or too quick, Zoe admitted, but they're getting clearer every day as Max gets stronger. He showed me the shiny bracelet 3 times before I could see the name on it. The bracelet had been a significant breakthrough in the case. After Zoe described it, Officer Taylor had searched the bushes near Sullivan's fence and found exactly what she'd described, a medical alert bracelet belonging to Wilson's brother-in-law, Michael Reeves. When confronted with this evidence, Reeves had broken down and confessed to being present when Wilson killed Sullivan, though he claimed he only helped dispose of evidence afterward. The doorbell rang, interrupting their conversation. Jack answered it to find Officer Taylor and Detective Mercer on their doorstep. Sorry to drop by unannounced, Taylor said, but we have some updates on the case that couldn't wait. In the living room, the officers declined offers of coffee, their expressions serious. We've arrested Wilson, Detective Mercer announced without preamble. Between the notebook, Reeves's testimony, and forensic evidence from Sullivan's house, we have enough to charge him with first-degree murder. Jack exhaled heavily. That's good news, right? It means Zoe and Max are safe now. Officer Taylor shifted uncomfortably. That's what we need to discuss. Wilson made bail this afternoon. His family has money and connections. And just before we came here, we learned that Reeves escaped from custody during a transfer. Sarah felt her blood run cold. What are you saying? We're saying you need to be careful, Detective Mercer replied gravely. Wilson knows we found Sullivan's notebook, and it won't take much for him to figure out how we found it. You think he might come after Max, Jack stated, or Zoe. We have no specific threat, Officer Taylor clarified quickly. But given Wilson's resources and what's at stake for him, a murder charge and the exposure of a drug trafficking network within the department, we can't rule it out. So what do we do? Sarah asked, instinctively moving closer to Zoe, who was listening with unnerving calmness. "We're assigning a patrol car to your street, effective immediately," Detective Mercer said, "and we'd like to install some additional security measures at your house. Better locks, motion sensors, direct line to dispatch." "The bad men are watching our house," Zoe said suddenly, looking up from the stuffed bear in her lap. "Max saw them yesterday when the nurse took him outside for fresh air. A car with dark windows that stayed too long." The officers exchanged alarmed glances. "Did Max see who was in the car?" Officer Taylor asked, no longer showing any hesitation about addressing Zoe's unusual connection with the dog. Zoe shook her head. The windows were too dark. But he felt the same bad feeling he had when the men came to Officer Bryan's house. By the time the officers left 2 hours later, the Collins home had been equipped with new deadbolts, window sensors, and a panic button that connected directly to police dispatch. They'd also agreed to delay Max's discharge by 1 day to allow for additional security measures to be put in place. "Try to go about your normal routine tomorrow," Detective Mercer advised as she left. "We don't want to tip off Wilson that we're concerned about a potential threat, but be vigilant." That night, neither Jack nor Sarah slept well. They took turns checking on Zoe, who slumbered peacefully, untroubled by the adult fears swirling around her. "Should we reconsider bringing Max here?" Sarah whispered when Jack returned from his 2 a.m. check on their daughter. "What if we're putting Zoe in danger?" Jack sat heavily on the edge of the bed. "I've been asking myself the same thing, but I'm not sure separating them is the answer. Whatever this connection is between them, it seems to be helping both the investigation and Max's recovery. It's just so much responsibility," Sarah sighed. 2 weeks ago, our biggest worry was whether Zoe was ready for kindergarten next fall. Now we're harboring a witness to a murder and dealing with corrupt police officers." Jack took her hand. "We can still back out. The department would find another solution for Max." Sarah thought about how devastated Zoe would be if they changed their minds, how betrayed Max would feel after everything he'd been through. "No," she said finally. "We made a commitment. We'll just have to be extra careful until this is resolved." The next day passed with excruciating slowness. Jack went to work but called home every hour. Sarah kept Zoe inside, using the rainy weather as an excuse, and tried not to jump at every sound. By late afternoon, when it was time to pick up Max from the animal hospital, they were all on edge. Dr. Chen met them with a wheelchair-like cart for Max, complete with a harness to support his hindquarters. "He's made remarkable progress," she told them, as a veterinary technician brought the German Shepherd out. "He can bear some weight on his hind legs now, which is more than we expected at this stage." Max looked dramatically better than he had 2 weeks ago. His eyes were alert and bright, his coat regaining its luster. When he saw Zoe, his tail wagged vigorously, and he attempted to pull himself forward despite his limitations. "Max!" Zoe rushed to him, throwing her arms around his neck. The dog nuzzled her hair, making a soft whining sound of happiness. "He says he's ready to come home," Zoe announced, looking up at her parents with a beaming smile. The process of getting Max settled into the special van provided by the police department, equipped with a ramp for his cart, and then into their home, was complicated but manageable with the detailed instructions Dr. Chen had provided. By early evening, Max was installed in his new bed in the living room, carefully positioned so he could see the front door. "He likes it here," Zoe reported, sitting cross-legged beside the dog bed, "but he's a little worried about protecting us when he can't walk properly yet." Sarah knelt beside them, gently stroking Max's head. "You don't need to protect us, boy. You just focus on getting better." But Max's dark eyes seemed to hold a different opinion as they scanned the room, assessing entry points and potential dangers with the training of a police dog. That night, they established a new routine. Jack helped Max outside one last time using the supportive harness, then secured the house with their new alarm system. Sarah settled Zoe into bed, leaving her door slightly ajar at her insistence, so Max can check on me with his mind. "Try to get some sleep," Jack told Max, as if the dog understood him directly. "We're all safe here." Max rested his head on his paws, but remained alert, his ears moving at every sound from outside. Even after Jack and Sarah retired to their bedroom, they could hear him occasionally shifting position, seemingly unable to fully relax in the new environment. Around 3 a.m., Sarah woke to a strange sound. At first, she thought it was part of a dream, a scraping, dragging noise coming from somewhere in the house. She lay still, listening intently, when she heard it again. Beside her, Jack stirred. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. Sarah nodded, reaching for her phone on the nightstand. The house was equipped with a new security system, but what if someone had managed to bypass it? The sound came again, a slow, laborious dragging, punctuated by the click of nails on hardwood. Then Sarah realized what she was hearing. "It's Max," she whispered. "He's trying to move." They got out of bed quietly and crept down the hallway. In the dim light from the nightlights they'd installed for Max's benefit, they saw an astonishing sight. The German Shepherd had somehow dragged himself off his bed and was inching his way down the hallway toward Zoe's room, using only his front legs to pull his body forward. "Max," Jack called softly. "What are you doing, boy? You're going to hurt yourself." The dog froze, turning his head to look at them. There was an urgency in his eyes that made Sarah's pulse quicken. "He's trying to get to Zoe," she realized aloud. "Something's wrong." They rushed to their daughter's room, pushing the door open wider. Zoe was sleeping peacefully, but something felt off. Sarah sniffed the air, detecting a faint but acrid smell. "Do you smell that?" she asked Jack. He nodded, already moving toward their kitchen. "Stay with Zoe." Sarah knelt beside Max, who had continued his painful journey to Zoe's room. "What is it, boy? What did you sense?" Behind her, Jack called out in alarm. "Sarah! The kitchen! Something's on fire in the wall!" The next moments passed in a blur. Jack ran back with the fire extinguisher, while Sarah scooped up a confused, half-asleep Zoe. Max barked from his position on the floor, the sound urgent and commanding despite his weakened state. "Electrical fire," Jack explained breathlessly as he ran past. "Behind the refrigerator. Call 911. Sarah grabbed her phone with one hand while holding Zoe with the other, quickly dialing emergency services. Within minutes, the smoke detectors began blaring as the smell grew stronger. "We need to get outside," Sarah decided, setting Zoe down. "Honey, help me with Max's harness. We need to get him out too." Together, they managed to secure the supportive harness around the German Shepherd, who seemed more concerned with their safety than his own discomfort. With Sarah on one side and Zoe on the other, they carefully helped Max navigate toward the front door, while Jack battled the growing fire in the kitchen. The night air was cool as they emerged onto the front lawn. Sarah could hear sirens in the distance, growing louder. The police car that had been stationed on their street was already pulling into their driveway, the officer rushing toward them. "Electrical fire," Sarah explained breathlessly. "My husband's still inside with the extinguisher." The officer spoke into his radio, confirming that fire units were already en route. As if on cue, Jack emerged from the house, coughing and soot-streaked but unharmed. "I think I got most of it," he reported. "But there's still smoke. The wiring in the wall was burning." Neighbors began emerging from surrounding houses, drawn by the commotion. As fire trucks arrived and firefighters took over, the Collins family huddled together on the lawn, all acutely aware that without Max's warning, the fire might have spread undetected until it was too late. "He saved us," Jack said, looking down at the German Shepherd who lay exhausted between them, his mission accomplished. How did he know? The smoke detectors hadn't even gone off yet. "He heard the fire in the walls," Zoe explained, her small hand resting on Max's head. "And he smelled it before the smoke came out. That's what police dogs are trained to do." One of the firefighters approached them after completing an initial assessment. "You folks were lucky. Looks like an electrical short behind your refrigerator started a slow burn in the wall. Another hour and your whole kitchen would have been engulfed, probably while you were sleeping." Sarah tightened her arm around Zoe, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Jack voiced what they were all thinking. "We wouldn't have known until it was too late if Max hadn't warned us." In the chaos of fire trucks, police reports, and concerned neighbors, no one immediately noticed the dark sedan parked half a block away, its engine running, its occupant watching the scene with calculated interest. But Max noticed. Even exhausted from his heroic effort, the German Shepherd's eyes fixed on the vehicle, a low growl rumbling in his chest. "What is it, Max?" Zoe asked, following his gaze. "The bad man is watching us," she whispered to her parents. "Max says we need to be very careful now." The sedan pulled away before anyone could identify it, disappearing into the night. But its presence left a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. Despite their careful precautions and the police protection, they had been found. And Max, still recovering from his devastating injuries, had just proven he would do anything to protect his new family, even if it meant dragging himself across the floor when he could barely walk. As dawn broke and the emergency vehicles finally departed, the Collins family faced a decision. Their home was safe to reoccupy according to the fire department, but the sense of security they'd carefully constructed had been shattered. "We can't stay here," Jack said quietly as they sat in their living room, Max once again settled in his bed, but clearly on alert. "Not if Wilson knows where we are." Sarah nodded in agreement. "But where can we go that would be safe?" Zoe, who had been whispering to Max, looked up at her parents. "Max says we should go to the place with the big trees and the lake, the place where no one can find us." Jack and Sarah exchanged puzzled glances. "Honey, what place is that?" Sarah asked. "The cabin," Zoe replied simply. "The one that belongs to Aunt Lisa. Max saw it in my memories when I was telling him about catching frogs last summer. He says it's far away from everything, which is good." Sarah's sister Lisa did indeed own a remote cabin in the mountains, a 3-hour drive from the city. They had visited once the previous summer, and the location was certainly isolated, accessible only by a private road and surrounded by national forest. "That might actually work," Jack said slowly, "at least until they catch Wilson and Reeves." And so, as the sun rose fully over their neighborhood, the Collins family began making plans for a hasty retreat, not from danger, but towards safety. A journey that would take them far from home, but keep them together. A family unit now expanded to include a wounded German shepherd with an extraordinary bond to their daughter. What would you do if your pet suddenly tried to warn you about danger in the middle of the night? Would you listen? The journey to Lisa's cabin took place under a veil of secrecy and precaution. Detective Mercer arranged for a police escort to accompany them out of the city limits, while Officer Taylor helped coordinate with local authorities near the cabin to ensure periodic welfare checks without drawing unwanted attention. "Remember, no social media posts, no phone calls except on the secure line we've provided," Detective Mercer instructed as they loaded their hastily packed belongings into the specially equipped van. "As far as anyone knows, you're staying with relatives while your house is repaired after the fire." Max observed the activity from his specially padded area in the back of the van, his intelligent eyes missing nothing. Though still unable to walk without assistance, his alert posture and attentive gaze gave him an air of dignified protection, despite his limitations. "He's feeling better about leaving now that he knows we'll be safer," Zoe reported, sitting beside the German Shepherd's stretcher. "But he's worried about the long drive hurting his back." Dr. Chen, who had arrived early to check Max's condition before the journey, handed Sarah an additional bottle of pain medication. "Give him one of these an hour before you leave. It should make the trip more comfortable without sedating him too much." The drive to the mountains was tense but uneventful. Jack focused on the winding roads while Sarah constantly checked the rearview mirror for any vehicles that might be following them. In the back, Zoe kept Max company, whispering reassurances whenever they hit a rough patch of road that caused him discomfort. Lisa's cabin appeared exactly as Sarah remembered it, a sturdy 2-bedroom structure nestled among towering pine trees, with a small deck overlooking a pristine lake.